Ted Cruz has a plan for the midterms. He knows the Republicans need a little bit of help, and he has stupidly come up with more tax cuts as the answer. Doesn't seem like the sort of thing to get regular Americans back on your side, but hell, Republicans have been pushing it for decades, so maybe they're onto something. In this particular case, it's also fairly anti-democratic how they want to do it. So Ted Cruz and Tim Scott are asking the Trump administration to approve a $200 billion tax cut without involving Congress at all. And gee, I wonder if Trump's gonna wanna do it. We'll have to stay tuned to find out. Now, overall, that sounds pretty bad. It sounds pretty elitist that you would do hundreds of billions of dollars more tax cuts after already handing over like $5 trillion to the wealthy. You're still hungry, but that said, maybe secretly this is a tax cut. It's gonna help out the little guy. So let's jump into the details. Ted Cruz, Tim Scott will send a letter to Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent on Tuesday, urging him to use executive authority to reduce some of the taxes paid on capital gains, a change that would lower the tax burden on Americans selling stocks, businesses, homes, and other assets. So probably not helping out the little guy, unless the little guy weirdly owns a lot of property that he'd like to unload and not pay more than he needs to in taxes. So this is like the most elitist sort of tax. They already pay way less in capital gains than you do for the work, the money that you earn by like the sweat of your brow, that like actually doing real work. They already pay less, but it's too much according to Ted Cruz. And why wouldn't Ted Cruz have that position? Why wouldn't Tim Scott? Why wouldn't Trump and the rest of them? When every one of their donors makes virtually all of their money from the sorts of things that are taxed through capital gains. And so of course they're gonna try to push this through. Now, it might not be that they think this is actually beneficial at all. It might just be they think, well, we're not gonna be in control that much longer. We should really try to wring this thing out as much as we can before we're yeeted out of control of the House and possibly the Senate as well. Now, of course, they're not gonna admit that. They're gonna pitch it as if it's more positive. So this is a bit of the letter that they're gonna send to the Trump or to Scott Bessent, saying using your executive authority to eliminate an unfair inflation tax on everyday Americans is the single most pro-growth economic action the administration can take unilaterally, and it would boost savings, spur investment, and create jobs nationwide. I don't believe that any of that makes sense now. I'm not like a multi-millionaire tax investment guy, but like, if theoretically this would incentivize people to do more selling of stock, then does that actually boost savings? Like, yeah, you can transfer your real estate or whatever, but like, how is that helping to generate jobs? I find all of this to be very confusing. And then I remember that they're goddamn liars and they're just trying to make more money while they can. Anyway, under current law, the way that I think we're probably just gonna extend this period. We'll do the housing thing with Sharon tomorrow. Under current law, basically here's the argument they're making about the inflation thing, pitching this as being anti-inflation. An investor who bought $100 worth of stock back in 1990 and sold it today for $300 would currently own capital gains taxes on the full $200 in profit. But the $100 investment in 1990 would be worth roughly $230 in today's dollars after accounting for inflation. Under the Cruz-Scott proposal, the investor would only owe taxes on that $70 rather than the full $200. That is why the proposal is known as indexing capital gains for inflation. And look, I'm not all the time an a-hole. I'm not even saying that that doesn't in some way make sense. If you wanted to do a suite of proposals that are designed to tackle and beat the crap out of inflation everywhere it rears its ugly head, then maybe that could be a part of it. But you wrote an entire letter about that. When you think about the concerns that people have about inflation, the only thing that you think is worth tackling is, oh no, somebody who's been sitting on stock since 1990. Most people are not concerned about this because they can't afford to own stock because of the real inflation that is wrecking their economic health. Now you could do something about that, but you're too busy worrying about people. By the way, that explanation, somebody who bought $100 worth of, you think they're worried about a person who's set to pay taxes on $200 rather than $70? That is a stupid little fake explanation. They're worried about people who are selling millions upon millions of dollars a year in property and in stocks. That's what they're worried about. It's not about a mom and pop who bought one share of Intel or whatever. That's not what this is. This is billionaires wanting to make as much money as possible. So look, if you're gonna try to sell us on it, could you at least not lie to our face about it? But it's Ted Cruz and it's Tim Scott, so no, we can't expect them to do that.